Hello everyone and welcome! Today I'm back with the 39 Chevy Coupe model car to RC conversion. It's been a little while since I posted a video featuring this project, but I'm happy to be working on this car once again. As you'll know if you've seen my prior videos featuring this project, I'm adding a lot of scale details to this build, from the lifelike drivetrain and suspension layout, including some 3D printed leaf springs in the rear, to this great looking body sourced from a monogram plastic model kit. Many of the parts that I'm using to turn this model kit into a fully functional RC vehicle are 3D printed, with the STL files being available on our Patreon page. Rather than design some brand new custom parts specifically for this project, I'm challenging myself to only utilize existing STL files we currently have available on Patreon, putting myself in the perspective of one of our Patreon members doing a custom build. Naturally, some work and problem solving was required in a few sections, but overall a pretty simple project that can be done with a little time and patience. At this point, the car is nearly complete. It works perfectly and all of the hard work's been done, so most of what's left is simple paint and assembly. Of course, if you'd like to catch up with the progress that's already been made, I'll include a link to the video playlist below in the description. Today I'm going to be focusing on the interior. It's not the case with every project that I get the opportunity to add a detailed interior, since it's usually either not present or is made shallower in order to make room for the RC electronics and chassis below. But again, with this project, scale realism is the goal, so I'm using some extra tiny size RC electronics to make sure they don't get in the way. The ESC and receiver fit perfectly into this gas tank, almost like this model kit was designed for this type of RC conversion. No need to hack up this interior in any way, I can simply remove each part from the tree and build it as per the instructions. So I've got all the interior parts laid out. Not very many parts, and it's kind of lacking some detail in a few sections like the door panels. Understandable and somewhat expected from an older kit like this. To give credit where credit's due, the included dash does have some nice molded detail. The seats and the steering wheel as well have some nice detail. Really, it's just the interior tub that's sort of lacking, but I think it would look cool to add my own door panels. I know I said at the beginning of this project I didn't want to design any custom parts for this project. I wanted to put myself in the perspective of one of our Patreon members building a completely custom car like this. But I think I'll make an exception here because the door panels are purely cosmetic, and of course I will be posting the STL files if you're doing a similar project and want to use them. Should be very easy, I'll just measure across, measure down, and I'll make it thin so when I glue it in place it will match the curvature of the door. So I'll take some measurements, get that door panel designed, and we'll see how it looks. As I have many times before, I used Autodesk Fusion 360 to design the door panels. I added things like an armrest and a window winder, but didn't go to the trouble of adding too much detail so that the part will be easy to print, and being that these details are so small, they don't really need more than just the simple shapes that you see here. Nothing special, but I think it'll go a long way to adding to the look of this car's interior. And we have door panels. Even though they're printed flat obviously, they're so thin, they'll match that curvature perfectly, just need a little glue. I'm happy with how they turned out, nice and simple. I thought being that this is a modified car, adding a Chevy bow tie to the bottom would be kind of cool. I'm not sure how much it shows up on camera, but you can kind of see that texture, just a side effect of FDM 3D printing. A lot of times that's not really desirable. However, in this case, I think it'll look pretty cool. I think it'll maybe make it look a little bit more like a fabric. Sort of like on the model kit, you get a bit of a rougher texture to represent carpet. Completely optional, but pretty cool. I also found a little tachometer in my junk drawer. I think I'll be adding that to the dash as well. To help each of these interior components look their best and fit together well, I did some sanding and trimming where necessary. The seat backs needed to be glued into place. They weren't the best fit, so I did some sanding to try and make them look a little more lifelike. In hindsight, as you'll soon see, I probably should have used some filler to fill the crack between those two parts, but in the end it all came together okay. But sometimes it does pay off to use a little filler and take that extra time to really make it perfect. Most of the parts that you see here I will be painting in just a minute. A few parts though, such as the steering wheel and the shifter, I figured I could just add a little detail by hand with a marker and that would be good enough. I did mask off the lower sections of the doors underneath where the door panels will go, that's so the Chevy bow tie will be black rather than the same color as the interior. Very easy to do, and I thought it would look cool and add a bit of variation. As you'll soon see though, the seats block most of the lower section of the door panels from view, so it's hard to notice, but still kind of cool. I got each part painted using a variety of different gray spray paints just to add some variation between the seat material, door panels, and the rest of the interior. I'm not concerned about perfect coverage or the presence of some imperfections here and there. Not only is this an old car, so a little wear and tear and imperfections would be normal, but I think it helps to add to the look of the interior being comprised of carpet, vinyl, or other fabrics versus having a perfectly smooth glossy surface. For some interiors that can look cool, but I'm not really going for that look with this project. While the paint was drying, I turned my attention to the body. To get it ready for paint, I started by removing some imperfections such as the mold lines with some sandpaper and sanding sticks. Overall, this body is well molded and doesn't require a ton of work to look its best, but a little work can go a long way to achieving a better appearance with the finished car. All of this sanding can get quite tedious though. I made sure that I went over the entire outer surface of the body with some 800 to 1000 grit sandpaper to help with paint adhesion. I also deepened all of the panel gaps and I glued the firewall and hood into place. I believe I talked about this in a prior video, but basically my plan is to have the upper part of the body remove in one piece, and that's how you'll access the battery in the trunk. It snaps into place well enough, and the hood will come off with the rest of the body, and the grille will remain with the chassis and fender piece. Should be a good convenient setup, allowing easy access for when it's time to change the battery. I'll do some sanding on that lower piece as well to help with paint adhesion, but for the most part this body is ready for paint. At this point the paint on the interior parts had dried, so I could get those parts glued into place, though not before adding a few final details with a chrome pen and markers. Earlier I applied a clear coat over the seats to give them a somewhat glossy appearance to maybe replicate something like vinyl. The clear sort of messed with the primer that I had applied first, giving the seats a slightly rough look. As I said before, I don't mind that on this car, it just makes them look like they're kind of old and have some wear. I applied a wash with some black acrylic paint to add a bit of further weathering. Obviously not perfect, but they don't have to be. That's sort of the joy of building older cars. Any imperfections you can just sort of call it wear and tear. That's my philosophy anyways. If I wanted to go even further, I could have dug a few holes in the seats or made some more obvious cracks, maybe cut some small pieces of duct tape and stick them on to look like a cheap repair. There's all kinds of creative things that you can do to give your models a bit more character. I got the remaining parts such as the tachometer glued into place. Obviously it's at quite an angle, but I sort of had to put it on that way, otherwise it wouldn't fit with the windshield. I won't be gluing everything into place until after I've painted the body, but here's a quick mock-up of what the interior looks like so far. It's a bit hard to see inside and especially hard to film, but it does look pretty cool. It's always nice when you can add a full interior to an RC build. I appreciate you all checking out this little update. To totally complete the interior, I will need to paint the carpet and glue a few things in place, which I'll do after I paint the body. I haven't fully decided on a color just yet. It is kind of tempting to try out a two-tone look. I don't know though, we'll see. I'm very happy with how those custom door panels turned out. You can't really see them too well once the body is in place, but it's still cool. At this point, just a little bit more prep work to do before it's ready for paint. After that, I'll be able to do the final assembly and the car will be complete. Certainly stay tuned for all that. Thank you all so much for sticking with me throughout this project, but as you can see, this car is nearing completion, so certainly stay tuned. That's going to be all for today's video. Huge thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.